So let's bring on our legal panel. I'm joined by NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber and trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Maris. Thanks to you both for being here. Okay, the whole case seems to revolve around whether or not Baldwin pulled the trigger. He says he didn't. The prosecutor in today's charges seems to say, yes, he did.
Yeah, and really, that's what it comes down to, because, and it's complicated, right? The original gun was destroyed by the FBI in their testing. And so we thought that was the end of the case. And it turns around, they actually reassembled the gun. They sent it to an independent forensics lab in that state. And what they were able to determine is the only way that gun could have gone off is if the trigger was pulled, if it was depressed, which would suggest that Alec Baldwin wasn't telling the truth.
But, Misty, this new forensic analysis is on a gun that isn't the same gun that was fired on the set.
Absolutely. That opens the door wide open for the defense to really attack that analysis. How do you know that the only way this gun could have discharged is by pulling the trigger? And why didn't we get the opportunity to conduct our own independent testing on the gun that was actually used? You know, that model that's being used to conduct the testing, the defense is going to argue that that's not reliable and that's not dispositive, and that's how they're going to try and raise reasonable doubt.
Isn't that a problem, Jesse? I mean, that they're using replacement parts on a gun. The gun they're testing in this new evidence and for these new charges is not the same gun.
And let's be clear, just because he has been charged doesn't mean they're going to get a conviction. I agree with Misty. There are so many ways you can say, how do we trust this examination? What are we talking about here? Now, I will tell you, for an advantage for the prosecution, they charged him with two different theories of involuntary manslaughter. So either the jury would have to find that he was negligent with the weapon, maybe he didn't use reasonable care, or that he totally disregarded the safety of others and knew that there was a risk of death, which signals to me, and the central question, other than pulling the trigger, pointing it in the direction that he did, because you're hearing so much testimony right now and accounts that you never point the gun directly at somebody on set. You point it off, you never point it directly at a human being.
And in fact, there's another part of that interview that he gave to ABC News where he does say, I would never do that. I would never point a gun directly at a person.
Right, acknowledging that that would be not in line with safety protocols.
But in this fact, he did.
Right, and that's why everything's based on, because it's a recklessness standard. Even though negligence, that word, is in the statute that is being charged, negligent use of a firearm, it's really recklessness when it comes to criminal culpability. So was there this deviation that had no regard for human life, and it requires us going into his head, his subjective knowledge of what would be safety protocols, and prosecutors are going to have to attack and say, well, how did he deviate from that? So that's a point that they're obviously going to be latching onto.
And the other big issue, of course, is did he not pay attention during the safety protocols? He was a producer on the film. They were already concerns about the safety on set. And the fact that if he was on his cell phone and wasn't paying attention to the training sessions and decided to have this dress rehearsal, which was kind of rushed, it seemed. Like she wasn't there, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed. The armor wasn't there, but you felt the need to just have this rehearsal.
Yeah.
Those are really tough questions. Not saying a conviction, but tough questions.
All right, the other big issue unaddressed is, you know, what Alec Baldwin was saying with Chris Cuomo there, which is how live ammunition got on that set. We still don't know.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question. And guaranteed, as Alec Baldwin said in that interview, that's going to be consistent with his defense, that's really the critical fact. That's really the only thing that matters. There's going to be a lot of focus on that. And look, there's a lot of information about this case because there's civil lawsuits, there's charges against others. And so that question has still yet to be answered.
See, the way that I would look at it, too, though, is, yeah, who could have predicted that a live round would be there? But how many times do we cover trials where they bring out a weapon, like the murder weapon, but they lock it, and they never have it pointed at somebody? They don't have it pointed at the jury. They don't have it pointed at the attorneys. You know, part of me would wonder if that's an argument that would be made in court. The reason we're not doing this is because we know there's always a risk if you bring any kind of weapon onto set.
But they're shooting a movie where the character's
firing
supposed to pull out of the gun and fire it at somebody.
Right. And that's why, even though this trial is so salacious, a lot of it's going to be going through those safety protocols. What's standard? What was expected on the set specifically, and how the conduct was different. That's the big focus in this case.
Well, the armorer, whose job it was to secure all the guns and ammunition on the set, goes on trial next month. So will we hear something different or revelatory in that trial, do you think?
We'll learn more.
We'll learn more, but how many, I mean, in this case, it just
that was her job.
Everybody's putting the blame on somebody else. I think we're going to get a lot more answers because it was her responsibility to make sure there wasn't live ammunition on that set. And maybe there are going to be loose holes, but she also has a lot of tough questions.
And Jesse, but to that point, you make such a good point. One of the other issues is her qualifications. And that's going to be a part of her trial and going to be relevant to this trial as well.
Very young, very inexperienced. By the way, the union representing actors has come out with a statement saying it is not the actor's job to make sure that the firearms are safe. That is the armorer's job. So, wow. All right. Misty Maris, Jesse Weber, thank you so much. Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.